And thank you all for being here. Most of all, thank you for taking some time out tonight. Clearly, the NBA didn't consult Tiffany when they were scheduling game 1 of the finals, so I will have blinders on, and thank God for DVRs, so that life can continue outside of sporting events for some of us. I always like to do these things to just kind of make it more interactive. And so what I'd like for you to do right now is just fold your arms. And note how comfortable that feels to do it unconsciously. Now, fold your arms the other way. And just take a moment to see how that feels. I do this just to get people feeling a little uncomfortable, right? Because I think that in order to be an ally, or to be an ally from any race, class, ability group, you have to have that skill of being okay with being uncomfortable. I think that that's one of the key starting points for determining why, where, when, and how to be an ally. So part of the work I do with allyship, it begins with helping people define, design, and deliver bias mitigation strategies. Now that's a mouthful, right? What I really do is create space and allow people to learn more about the decisions that they make and how those decisions impact relationships, organizations, and over time, institutions. And so one of the easiest places to start is with learning about similarity bias, or the cognitive heuristic of the neural wiring that happens automatically from your amygdala up of placing people in an in-group and an out-group, right? It happens all the time. It happens automatically. It happens to all of us. And most of the time it serves us pretty well. But what we need to really be mindful of are those times where it doesn't, right? Because it happens unconsciously. And I think with a lot of the hijacking of bias in the news, it's important to really distinguish and understand where it comes from, right? And so the other exercise I like to do with all of my workshops is to have people pair up. So I'm going to ask you to do that now. Just turn to somebody next to you. You don't have to get up and move, but just get paired up. Unless you're by yourself. Now, Joe, would you mind going over there with Steffi? That'd be great. Just get paired up. And if there's 3, that's fine too, but get with somebody. And I want you to think about your name for a moment. So your name is something that you're given when you're born, you carry it with you for your lifetime, and then you leave it behind when you're done on this little blue ball that hovers around the sun. And it's often overlooked as such a significant part of your identity. So just share with your paired person the story of your name, okay? And here's some prompts if you need them. But take turns, share the story of your name. You got 2 minutes, go. bless the children and the teachers of this world. That works every time. So, quick debrief. What did you learn about the person that you were paired with?
Some family history.
Some family history? What else? What did you learn about the person that you were paired with?
There was a battle within the family for what the name should be.
Nice. Anything from over here? Somebody's learned something about the person they were talking to. I saw a lot of good conversation happening over here. Something you didn't know about that person before tonight.
Well, I just met her, so so both her name and her family history and then sort of the work that she does as well. And the fact that she'd actually played this game before.
So why do we do this? Why is this such a nice way to kind of break the ice?
Everyone can share in it.
Everyone can share in it, right? And from this unconscious bias perspective, where it's harder to put somebody into an outgroup when you have some commonality with them, right? And sharing the story of a name creates that commonality. And so I love the exercise. I encourage you to use it anytime you're in this kind of situation or scenario, but it really does help mitigate against that top bias, right? The like me bias or a similarity bias. It mitigates against that risk of putting somebody in that outgroup. Now, we need to understand that the seeds of bias are sown with these cognitive heuristics. But the fact that everybody is biased does not mean that we ignore the institutional structures that exist and continue to find newer and more sophisticated and subtle ways to oppress people and preserve power and privilege. The fact that everybody is biased does not mean that we simply stop using our conscious mind to affect change and perhaps unlearn some of those categories and patterns that are persistent in our unconscious. Right? So, when I round this out, I want to just share a story that may surprise some of you. Okay? This story may surprise some of you. So, race became a central, integrated part of my life when I asked this beautiful woman to marry me. This process involved going to my father and asking him what his thoughts were, as I'm considering proposing to this woman. And my dad is old school, well-intended old school, but his comments to me were, Matt, you've been living in San Francisco for a little while now, and the rest of the world doesn't think like those people in San Francisco do. And the best I could come up with at the time was, well, Dad, I'm not marrying the rest of the world. But it got me, it never created doubt of my love for her. But it did start to get my wheels turning about, holy shit, I'm gonna bring her home to meet the rest of my family. And I have a brother who self-identifies as a redneck. He's a gun owner. He's an avid hunter and fisherman. And so as I played this out in my mind, I was thinking, it's inevitably, he's gonna make some kind of unconscious comment, especially after he has a few drinks. He's been known to say something inappropriate at best. And I was envisioning him and I stepping outside for some fisticuffs, right? And what happened when I brought Gigi home with me is he was the one of my entire family that went out of his way to make her feel welcomed, to make her feel part of the family, to make her feel like she belonged. And it blew my mind because of my bias that I had about what my brother was capable of. And so I share that story with you because, well, the final note on that story, when we were actually leading into getting married, the day of our wedding, my brother pulls me aside as we're waiting for all the things to happen upstairs, and he looks at me, and this was just like the cherry on top of the whipped cream on the sundae. He looks at me as I'm getting ready to marry Gigi, and he says, "Hey Matt, if this doesn't work out between the two of you, it's been nice knowing you." And so I share that story with you because as you move on in your allyship journey, have the courage to wade into those uncomfortable waters. Confront fears because bias is always in play. In order to be an ally, you must work to make the unconscious decisions conscious and reframe them if needed. But more importantly, you have to foster trust in your relationships so that you can hold people accountable. And more importantly, and even more importantly, so that other people can hold you accountable. And I encourage you to do your homework. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And remember that people may surprise you.
That was